Today we're joined by Caroline Wilkinson. She works for BBC Worldwide as Regional Director, and also Andy Fiddler, who is CEO and co-founder at The Hook. So yeah, Caroline, if you just want to introduce yourself.
Sure. So I work for Worldwide, which is the commercial division of the BBC, so I'm not public service. So outside the UK, anything where BBC Worldwide has a commercial perspective, that's what we do. So websites, apps, sites, TV channels outside the UK carry advertising, so that's what I do.
Hi, my name's Andy. I'm CEO of The Hook. The Hook is a relatively young business, very fast growing. It's rapidly grown since launch in 2014 to one of the largest youth entertainment publishers globally. So we reach up to 780 million people a month. And we do everything from comedy sketches to funny interviews with celebrities to live music gigs with up-and-coming and established music artists. Our core audience is 18 to 30, so very much on target for this. Male and female 50-50, and our mean age is about 22 and a half, so slightly younger than the kind of the Vices or the BuzzFeeds. A little bit about myself. I born in 1981, so just on the bordering age of a millennial, depending on which website you read. Set up my first business when leaving university with my business partner. We worked out of my mum's house in a time where if one of us had to be on the phone, the other one basically couldn't use the internet. So as a time when we were trying to sell digital advertising, it presented quite a few challenges. Yeah. Since then, we've built and sold several businesses within the youth and the media market. And it's actually out of one of those that basically the Hook was born. And yeah, that's me.
All right, cool. And I just also wanted to say that at the end of our little chat, Caroline will be doing a presentation as well on the millennial research that the BBC Worldwide have been doing. So if you could all stick around for that after as well, that'd be great. I just wanted to put to the panelists now what you think the sort of the issues with millennials and Generation Z at the moment are, and like how they're evolving.
When you say issues, what
priorities are there with millennials and Generation Z when you interact with them or you deliver content to them? What are the main things in your head from your point of view?
I think, I suppose my view on millennials or Generation Z, certainly having marketed to the youth all the way throughout these years, is they're not like this kind of weird demographic that it's kind of hard to reach. But it's, I suppose the distinct thing between, say, a millennial and the previous demographics is that they can very much smell the cell. And in a traditional, previous decades gone by, where traditional media pretty much told people what to think or what was cool or what was not, the users very much decide what they're going to share and therefore what their friends are going to see. And it's that kind of peer-to-peer recommendation. So. If you're going to basically be promoting your brand to millennials, you very much need to be authentic, and you can't go straight in and sell in a way that you would have done with other types of media. They'll either call that out on you on social, or it won't be shared and it won't actually engage. So. There's a number of things to do, but I suppose from a key issue is, I suppose, to make sure that you don't overly sell up front, and then you actually look to provide value and engage with them and kind of integrate your brand with the type of content that you're doing.
I mean, from the BBC's perspective, obviously there's two buckets. I mean, we're not just targeting millennials, obviously, it's much, much wider than that. But clearly, millennials is a key audience for the BBC because we want to be wherever the audience is watching us. So whether that's shooting video in portrait format so that obviously people really come to the app in better ways, whether that's doing some of our programs in 360, Facebook Lives. I think for us it's about trying to identify where the audience is and making sure that they can enjoy our content in the best way possible. outside of news at the BBC Worldwide, obviously we've got amazing brands like BBC Earth, Doctor Who, Sherlock, Top Gear, loads of, huge millennial brands that attract a millennial audience. And in fact, the Planet Earth guys have launched exclusive content with Snapchat in the US, for example. And that was 6 episodes of never been seen before footage. And again, for lots of audiences, that's their first interaction with the BBC, and maybe in America, is coming through the Snap Discover platform. So it really is, I think, from BBC's perspective, we want to be very platform agnostic. We want to make sure that we reach as many people as possible but in a really authentic way. Exactly what you were saying.
Yeah, I guess from my background in sort of music and that sort of thing, there's almost a thing of like this cool detachment thing where people try and act like they're not excited about something, and that's like some way of making it cool. But I don't know if you find that, like, how does that work with the hook, and how does that work with like BBC Worldwide? Like, how do you sort of engage with the content you're putting out? Do you act excited about it, or if like I see like music artists that they act like they're not bothered, that sort of thing, and that's the cool thing to do. Like, how does that work with your platforms?
As in, how do we talk about our own content that we're putting out?
Do you act like excited about it, or what's your sort of tone of voice?
Our tone of voice as a business is basically to be funny, except where inappropriate. That's kind of like one of our brand values. And so we've always tried and got that tone. I think it probably depends on what business you are. You can't necessarily completely change what you are just to try and fit in with a millennial. But I think in general, if you're going to be targeting millennials, so you're most likely going to be targeting them on social. The things that tend to work best are, I suppose, content that drives an emotion, but generally a positive emotion. So in traditional media, even TV today or in decades gone past, as a brand, if you wanted to drive emotion or a response, you'd either target someone's wants, or what would actually drive them more is you'd actually drive their fears. So obviously an insurance company would be a clear example of something like that. Whereas on social, that doesn't work because people care about what their personal identity on social or their social identity is perceived as, and so they're less likely to share something that's maybe, I suppose, a negative slant. So, if you are looking to promote stuff on social, generally content that's from a positive point of view is going to be a lot more shareable, a lot more engaging, and have a lot more people willing to actually engage around it than from a negative point of view.
I think from our perspective, it depends on the brand we're doing. Obviously, if you're in news and current affairs and hard-hitting stories, being funny probably wouldn't go down so well in that perspective. But I think it's about being authentic, and it's being about trustworthy. It's something that the BBC, from as a salesperson perspective, can be quite frustrating at times. But we always want to make sure that we put the audience first. But even within news, you can be, depending on the audience you're talking to, you can have that irreverency that you were talking about. We've got something called BBC Pop-Up with Ben Zand, and that's all about, the content is led very much by what he gathers on social media, what his followers are saying. And World Service do the same with BBC Minute, which is just a 60-second quick bulletin. They partner with local stations in countries all around the world to try and bring in that local audience. But I think for us it's about, I sound like a bit of a one-trick pony, but it is about authenticity and it is about trust. That's the number one thing that we want to do. Clearly, if it's Earth, if it's Top Gear, if it's Sherlock, it's completely different messaging, and so you would tailor that content towards that. But from a news perspective, I think thinking that, it's millennials, so we've got to be a bit sarky and a bit cool. Well, not really. And I think, our research has shown that more and more millennials, and certainly affluent millennials, are turning towards international news providers. Because if you think about fake news and everything that's going on in the world now, it's really important, if you're going to talk about a story online, share it with your friends, thought leader it, that it's coming from a trusted source. So I think that's where probably the BBC's we're a bit sexier than we used to be. Trust is sort of coming back on the agenda, I think.
Well, I think maybe with like BBC Worldwide, there's maybe the audience is already there, sort of thing. So you've got the established audience, which brings me on, Andy, to like the hook. Like, how did you sort of go about building your audience? Has it been sort of a reactionary thing where you see what works and then you sort of like run with that, or
Yeah, it was, so actually, I think I may have mentioned earlier, basically the hook was born out of one of our other businesses that me and my business partner own. We had an established offline student media business, and we were looking at launching an online offering. And funny enough, we actually, the two, you probably know them, the Lad Bible and Unilad, those guys were already around. We looked at using these guys in several different ways, and we decided we didn't want to be, I suppose, labelled as a Lad brand for the offering that we were launching. And it was at that point that we saw there was actually a huge gap in the market for a youth publisher that hits both male and females and kind of hits the kind of audience that we were looking to do. So that's how I suppose we kind of fell into it. And as far as growing, it was very much a test and learn. So we sold off our student media business, decided this is like a really exciting opportunity that we wanted to grow into. But we kept it quite open to start with. So, you know, we had literally one bucket called trending news, and we covered everything that was sort of trending news related to the youth. And it was only after a period that we started to identify the different passion points that, you know, seem obvious now, but that also work on social that the youth are interested in. So things like movies, music, you know, comedy, etc. And so it's very much been a learning curve for us as we've gone along. We didn't have the answer, you know, 3 years ago.
And I would add to that, we might have the audience, but we don't want to be complacent. So, you know, just because, BBC got a massive audience, you know, it's constantly about learning as well. And I think certainly from a news editorial perspective, as we've launched the website and launched the apps, it is, again, it's very, even for a big publisher, it's, when we're all the same, you know, it is about learning and making sure that you're bringing out new things, you're constantly being on as many platforms as possible as new platforms are popping up.
Yeah, I guess maybe for BBC Worldwide, if the audience is already there, maybe have you sort of like more just dipped your toe into like the social media things, like you were saying about Facebook Live and the different Snapchat things? Are you just sort of testing those things, or?
No. I mean, if you'd asked me this question a good few years ago, probably. But certainly, if you look at things like BBC World News, at BBC Breaking Twitter feed, I mean, I don't know how many millions it's at now. It's massive, and everything we do, it goes out on the linear channel, it goes out on digital, it's always on social. The new things we're doing in social is like the 360, the VR, loads of, all of that. And then, you know, it comes to things like India elections, we partnered with WhatsApp to make sure that, you know, for those areas where they may not be able to see us on other platforms, that we had somebody who was writing about the election and making sure it was available in language, because that's what World Service do. So the social's pretty, you know, is massive. But again, you want to make sure that you're still being, you know, going back to what it is, which is authenticity. So if it comes to breaking a news story, we might, I mean, there's very little difference now in the speed of which you break a news story. It used to be we had to check it 2 or 3 times before we'd break a news story. But now we pretty much, with news and social media, you can't afford to take that time. And so what we do is we take a position from an editorial standpoint where we will break the story, but we might say, this is what we know so far. So we never have to retract that, you know. So, but you need to be on there. You need to be telling people what you're doing.
Yeah, I guess you definitely like need to be visible. It's a visibility sort of thing. So yeah. I was also thinking, how should we, like, as your companies, how do you look at approaching like Generation Z and Millennials, especially with like Generation Z sort of growing up with mobile phones and the internet? I've sort of noticed with your website, Andy, as well, that it looked very mobile friendly. Is that like a very like a conscious thing you did on purpose?
Yeah, right near the beginning we had very much a large mobile audience, and now it's something like 90%. So, and most of our, I suppose, a lot of our content actually goes out on our social platforms, which are obviously going to be mobile, and then a lot of the traffic that we get to our website is coming from those social platforms. So again, it's mobile. As far as kind of clear, you know, understandings and distinctions between Generation Z and the younger Millennials, you know, I don't think I could give you any kind of, you know, haven't got any hard facts or insight into that. I suppose what our kind of overall approach is, you know, whether you're born before or after that kind of key point to go across each demographic, they're not going to significantly change as people. It's more about engaging with these people around their passion points. So, you know, if someone's into music or they're into a certain type of gaming or, you know, whatever it is, that's what's going to engage them more than treating them as, okay, these guys are millennials and these guys are Generation Z. So I think that's how we kind of look at it, more around their passion points and engaging around that than actually what specific age they are.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, just like you, the majority, 3/4, if not more, of our traffic now accesses the BBC through a mobile or tablet device globally outside the UK, because I'm not talking UK figures. And in my day job in ad sales, you know, when we're engaging with brands, we're making sure that we're producing a solution that is completely tailored for any platform. Because at the end of the day, you know, you just want to make sure that that's a success, and your client comes back, but also it's great content. So even if we're making it for brand, it's would I be interested in reading this anyway? Do we want to see it? You know, and sometimes, you know, you can get frustrations. Well, I want to talk about X. I've got a great white paper on Y, and you're like, oh, well, really, you know, do people care? But so it's about taking that content and making it into something that people are going to want to use, whatever the gender is, and certainly for millennial target audiences.
And I suppose just following on from that is, just building specifically for the platform. So when we work with brands, it's surprising how many brands are kind of far removed from the understanding of each of the different social platforms and how they should be perceived, or the type of content that they're creating. And when Facebook brought in their algorithm a couple of years ago, which meant that it was a lot harder to just straight reach all of your fans, even though it was a bit of a kick to quite a few people, actually what it means is it's basically servicing the best, most relevant content to a user at any one time. So over a period, what it's doing is it's just gradually making the content better and better and better for everyone, and everyone's just having to work harder. So I suppose the lesson you can take out of that is to make sure that the content that you're creating for each platform is actually specific to that platform. As an example, we worked with a very famous movie studio in America. They came to us with a trailer for a film that they were looking to push last year, and it was built very much for TV. And so what we did is we basically, we were the first guys to be able to edit their content outside their studios in LA. We made various different versions of it. We did something called dark posting, which I'd definitely recommend doing, where we could A/B test about 3 or 4 different versions of the content, different edits, different thumbnails, etc., to a small percentage of our audience, and actually see which works best. So it's kind of a takeaway to take, you know, for people that don't already know it, you know, things like dark posting, because the reality is content is king. The good content is going to fly, even more so with the recent algorithm changes. And no one knows what's going to work until you test it. So if you actually A/B test it beforehand, then it means you're going to get a lot better results.
What is dark posting, Andy, for anyone that doesn't know?
Okay, so dark posting is basically you advertise. So instead of just posting it on your own feed so that everyone can actually see it, you actually just basically advertise and block it from actually just appearing on your normal feed. To a small percentage of your users, and you can just put, you know, a few dollars, like 10 or 10 pounds or so behind it. You can select what kind of demographic you're looking to go for, or just, you know, say I don't want to have any selected demographic, and then put 3 or 4 different versions at the same time, and do these different versions, and then from there you can see which one wins. And, you know, I think that's a key takeaway that you can use, and it's what we always do when we're, I suppose, we either make content ourselves for brands, or we take people's existing content and then make it suitable for social. And whatever we do, whether it's made our own or using theirs, we always kind of A/B test it and make sure it's suitable to our audience.
Yeah, I mean, we do a lot of dark posting promotion. We use that on our own social feeds for BBC Storyworks as well. It's our content house. And we'll also do dark posting for promotion. We found it works really well because you can really reach out to the right people with a promo. It's not just throwing loads of posts on a random feed. You know, it's really making sure that people are more likely to engage with the content then. I
mean, does social media help a lot now with trying to target the right people? Is it change things in that sort of way? Can you target someone you'd want to?
Yeah, significantly. Even like just in the recent kind of updates to Facebook's advertising offering, it's changed dramatically, and we're actually making that as actually core part of what our offering as a business before. Whereas I think a lot of publishers, when they work with a brand, they just put it out on their pages, and it's very much still like a broadcast message going to every single member of their audience. Whereas we're actually looking at using Facebook advertising as an added, I suppose, offering to the content we produce. So what we're saying is, instead of just hitting all of our audience and some of those views are just going to be completely wasted, we can target specific audience buckets of people that we know that have engaged actively with, I don't know, say it's a horror movie we're looking at promoting, then we know that these guys have always actively engaged with horror movie content from us in the past. So we not only have influence over those users, but we know that it's the right guys that are actually going to go and buy your product.
Yeah, and on top of that, if you can do anything in digital these days, you can target anyone. And I remember when the BBC website first went commercial outside the UK, and all the journalists were horrified at the thought of ads appearing next to their content, and they had a little button they could turn off the ads if they didn't want it. And we ended up just unticking the box loads. Maybe they realised the world didn't end if there was ads, but that was just a contextual sell. Do you want to be in business? Do you want to be in the social pages? Do you want to be on news homepage? And now, obviously, with our DMP, you can, as anyone can. It's not rocket science. You can really drill down to specifics, and because I think that's what I've noticed in the marketing industry is that budgets have got less, and it's all about return on investment. It's all about data, which is, in the one part, I completely understand why that's happening, because obviously there's lots of pressure on brands to make sure that they're delivering against their KPIs. But from a media owner's perspective and a publisher's perspective, it can at times, I think, detract from the creativity and the creative process. And if it always comes down to a number, that luxury that we love when it's a brand campaign and we can work with the brand and create something great, and it doesn't have to come down to a specific percentage or a number, I think sometimes that can get lost. So because we always want to make sure that we're doing the right amazing content, whatever it is, whether it's paid for or it's our own editorial.
Yeah, and Andy, I know that you said that originally all the sort of traffic came through your social media. Was there a point where you tried to get it onto the website of The Hook? Was there sort of a conscious effort to do that?
As in
So sort of if you had like a big social media following, how did you translate that to your website? Was there
Okay, yeah. So up until recently, our website was actually slightly almost. If you looked at our website and you looked at our socials, you'd almost not see the same business. Our website is very much just article-based. Our social was where we did all our original video content. We do third-party content on there as well, but that's where we did things like we did the first Facebook Live comedy event up at Edinburgh Fringe Festival. We do all our gigs and all those kind of things. And our website is very different, and so actually it's launched just last week. So if you find any bugs, I apologise because we're just fixing it a little bit at the moment. But basically, we integrate now all of our social content into the main website. So if you were to actually look at our website, it pretty much provides a holistic view of our business as a whole, which is very much a platform or a social publisher. So a lot of our content that we produce and deliver is very much built for social, but we harness it essentially in the website. And the way we kind of, I suppose, bring the users over is it's from an article basis. We just put links on our Facebook page, and that drives users. We looked at Google, but it just didn't really back out. I can't see, for me, like the hundreds of journalists you need to appear at the top of a search engines. It's never going to back out money-wise for those types of publishers. So we've kind of gone down a slightly different model. We're a lot more social orientated.
Caroline, do you find that, was it the other way around for like BBC? So you were trying to get people from the website onto socials? Was there that sort of thing?
There's probably a lot of that, definitely, because we've been around for such a long time. So obviously we had a much bigger website following, and then before social even was around. So yeah, I know that the social editors and the journalists, they are all using their own social feeds now when they're talking, whether it's out in the field talking about a story. And we've obviously created individual Facebook pages like The Stig, Top Gear, BBC Earth have got their own one, and News has got you know, several, and sport, BBC Sport's got their own as well. So yeah, it's about making sure, again, that you've got that sort of circle, you're completing the circle, if you like. So if I might want to, I might come to you first on social, but then I might go and read something extra on the website, or vice versa, or I might even on the channel. So the channel that we sell is BBC World News, which is 24-hour news and information channel outside the UK. And even on there now, you'll see a lot more promotion where they'll put in the Twitter handles, they'll put in the website, so they're constantly driving people through to join the conversation online and into social.
Oh, so just to kind of, I suppose, from our point of view as a platform publisher, maybe aimed at a slightly younger demographic, our website at the moment, it's like a combined holistic piece of everything that we do. But the way we see it is, it's 1-2 years time, websites in our kind of world aren't going to exist. It's very much platform publishing, and so if you're looking to kind of build stuff from scratch, or how you're looking to build things, is I'd very much focus on just building stuff actually on the social. So even down, obviously Facebook are trying to work out what they're doing with things like instant articles. They're having a few issues at the moment, but once that happens, or once that works, then things are going to gradually get transferred over to there. I think the difference with someone like BBC, obviously they've got a strong pedigree, or with their other kind of media coming forward. But if you're looking within the kind of the digital space purely, then social is basically where it's going to be in the next year or two.